Hey everybody, I'm so excited to introduce you to Sandy Gooch. Many of you have shopped at Whole Foods. You know that company. Many of you have enjoyed much healthier foods over the years, but a lot of you may not know that on the West Coast, the woman who really changed the way we eat and the way we shop was Sandy Gooch. So I'm so happy to welcome you, Sandy, an old friend. Thank you for being with us and being willing to tell us part of your story today.
Of course, my pleasure.
Yeah. So, Sandy, you live in California part of the time and in Colorado part of the time. And you told me you're going to
Arizona.
and
Period.
Arizona. Okay. And you're going to New York City next week too. So,
Yes, I am
you,
indeed.
all right. Well, take us back. Tell us a little bit about how you started Mrs. Gooch's Whole Foods, health food stores, and why you started, because I know you had some pretty good reasons to do that at the time.
I think my story is can be relatable to stories that other people have about starting a business, becoming an entrepreneur, and so forth. And basically, I had a reaction in the 1970s, early, to a commonly used antibiotic, tetracycline. And it was, I was in really bad shape, pains radiating down my arm and throughout my chest. And trying to solve the problem, there was really no magic pill or anything. Well, my father was a research biologist and chemist, and he deducted that the only thing left for me to do was really to eat good food grown naturally to the source and organic. Well, what a challenge, Patty, that was to find healthy food. When I went from one supermarket to another, nothing organically grown was in a supermarket, and many items on the shelves had a variety of chemicals. So it became my job, my task to heal myself, to travel from San Diego to Santa Barbara and talk to farmers and little health food stores to get all the things that I needed to feel better.
Mm.
Eventually, I did feel much better. And I started lecturing to various groups, churches, synagogues, organizations, you name it, about healthy food because I
Mm.
was feeling pretty good. And one day a woman said to me, well, what you're talking about healthy food and whole grains and nothing with additives and preservatives and artificial flavor and artificial color. It sounds great. I don't have the time to get something like that. Why don't you open up a market that has everything you talk about? And I thought, why not?
And what were you doing for a living at the time, Sandy? You were lecturing because you're
Yes.
passionate about it, but I
Well,
know
I
you
had
had
been
another profession
Yes,
before.
I had been a master teacher for 17 years, dealing with and working and training students from USC, UCLA, and Pepperdine in regard to teaching methods, and also working with the Carnegie Institute as it relates to various tactics of teaching the communities and shortening the amount of time that it would take to learn a new subject or explore a new idea.
Uh-huh. Well, you and I have a lot in common that way then, because I say about my coaching practice, and I say for me, it took me 27 years to grow my business to 600 employees and such, and I can help shave years off that learning curve for clients. So as a master teacher, for you to be able to help people in all ways, it seemed like a natural transition. So what was it like in the early days? It's been written about extensively, but I know how did you choose your first location? And if you didn't have anybody throwing money at you, what did
No,
you do?
I didn't.
Uh-huh.
Well, I looked for a location and found an out of business A&P market. It
Mm,
was relatively small in today's standards. I think it was
right.
approximately 5,000 square feet. But in that day, there was nothing like a natural food market in the entire world that was that large.
Hmm.
So, in order to try to fund my concept, when I communicated with bank after bank after bank, no bank would give me a loan. One, I was a woman. In the 1970s, how women were able to get a loan or what totally different than now.
Right, right.
That was number one. Number two, there was no model. How could a bank judge, well, this really has a good plan or a good idea? There wasn't anything like it.
You were doing
Why would it work for a woman to start something that wasn't in existence?
That's like Blue Ocean Strategy, that wonderful book of today where it talks about you are in uncharted waters. So you had this vision. You found a store. It was a shell, and you needed to roll up your sleeves and get it done. So
Yeah.
what did you do?
Well, I took my teacher retirement money and a loan and funded a loan from my second mortgage.
Uh-huh. Most
The
of us
second
did that,
mortgage.
right?
And
Right.
that was the initial capital to start the Mrs. Gooch's first market in Mar Vista, West Los Angeles.
Uh-huh.
And I used my father and his information to help do the research that I would need in order to find product. I also had a friend from a health food store that came in and operated as a partner. He didn't put any money into the event. But anyway, he had opportunity to know various suppliers, distributors, small though they were,
Uh-huh.
to help to get that first store off the ground.
Oh, right. So you became their customer. They had to make a decision about extending credit to you, or
Oh,
did you have to
yeah.
buy everything COD, or did you have some good vendors that were
Well, I have
able
some
to help you out?
vendors who would, it was at the end of every month, then I would pay. And fortunately, we had quite a heavy traffic. In fact, I had scheduled for 4 ads to be run in the Los Angeles Times newspapers. And after the first ad, I had to cancel the other three because we were so crowded. I I couldn't handle anything more. We had
Oh, wow.
Rastafarians from Topanga, the Beverly Hills housewives, the UCLA students, the people from central Los Angeles, because there was nothing like it. So they all came to this little supermarket.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, they didn't have to drive to San Diego or Santa Barbara
That's
or
right.
400 miles back and forth. Well, what would you say the most challenging part? What was the most difficult of starting? Because you weren't a business owner before that. And then taking that leap to become an entrepreneur, I remember I felt like I had some crutches and I did one step at a time. And
Yeah.
so I didn't have to conceive that I was going to be a CEO. I just had to conceive that I was going to be a better recruiter, a better headhunter, and that's how I started mine. But I'm curious about that. What would you say the most
Well, I
difficult part?
think what I did is has some congruency with what you did, Patty, in that part of it has to do with don't compromise. By that, I mean, if you have a vision and it's ethical, and you're in your heart, you know it will work. There are a lot of people who will come to you and say, well, if you just, if you just diluted this, and if you just did that, you could make it work more, you'd have more people. But you have to be true to your values and to your goal. That doesn't mean that you can't learn more and always input more information to help give you a stronger platform of what you're doing and where you're going and all. But to be true to the cause and to your passion, you were, and that's what I did.
Mm-hmm. So was that the hardest part, or
Well, there,
uh
people who would come in and say, well, you could make more money if you just carry cigarettes, or, why don't you carry Jello or whatever it was? A lot of people want Jello. And I could use a lot of examples in regard to that. But it was important to maintain my philosophy of no artificial flavors, artificial colors, additives, preservatives, refined white flour, refined white sugar, hydrogenated vegetable oil, all of those things which help to diminish the health that we have and the health for me, and to input into other people was my passion.
well, good. Sandy, the pressure is on, right? We are expecting you to live well past 100.
Oh, thank you. That's my goal. Absolutely. So indeed, I do Zumba twice a week, gyrotonics. I try and walk 10,000 steps a day.
Oh,
And
great.
yes, if you were to open up my refrigerator and my cupboard, you'd find everything organic.
That's fantastic. Beautiful. I love what you said, and I'm going to use this as a quote, stay true to your values and your goals. That's important. And don't let the naysayers take you off, and don't slip, and don't give up on your values just because you could make it a little bit of extra money. Well, we
And
have
they're
a
all around. The naysayers they're everywhere. And I'm sure you've experienced that, Patty, in your life.
Yes, yes. You think about it. We have a mutual friend who sold her Kashi cereal, right?
Yes.
And then she and her husband were very much into fitness before they started this as a good energy source for trainers and people, athletes, and thus. And she said when they had the opportunity to sell many years later, they were getting offers by very large food enterprises. Most of those food enterprises are owned by tobacco companies, and they
Yes,
they would not sell to a
that's
tobacco
right.
related company, right?
We were
Mm-hmm.
one of the first stores to carry Kashi, and we met the owners of it, and they were true to their passion and their standards. And because of that, their product didn't change. In other words, it had the standards. And certainly there were many people who said, oh, if you just add sugar, if you just do this, it'll be better and you'll make more money. So I think part of what you do as an entrepreneur in a business is to not settle for, it's not, money is the byproduct of doing a good job, of doing something well. The people that I know who are successful entrepreneurs usually don't go in and say, oh, I want to make money, so I'm doing this. The money is a byproduct of something that they have a belief in, that they are aware of, that they know about. And so it's different, because if you do a good job and you're really savvy, the money will come.
Mm. Yeah, I remember our former Los Angeles Mayor, Dick Reardon, always talked about that too. He says, if you have a good idea, if you have a good business, the money will follow. Good.
That's right.
Well, Sandy, speaking of that, and we don't have to go too much into it, but it has been reported that after a number of decades that you sold your business to Whole Foods, a publicly traded company, for somewhere north of $60 million. So that must have been something else. I remember you and I talked about that shortly after you made that transaction. And was that a surreal experience or was it?
It was really a surreal experience because we had 815 employees, and each one of those people for me was like family, and I treated them as if they were family.
Mm,
This was part of the consideration in working out a plan with Whole Foods in regard to them acquiring the 7 Mrs. Gooch's markets. After much dialogue and knowing that Whole Foods would continue on and grow and expand, and though their standards were high, they weren't quite as limited as mine, but they still had the high standards. And so the acquisition occurred in September of 1993. And I remember after the deal was consummated, it took me over a year to go back into any one of my markets because the first time I tried, the staff just came over to me and started sobbing. And I looked at my husband, Harry, and I said, I can't do this, I just can't. And I walked out in tears myself. So it took a while to become more distant as such and stronger so that I could go back in and see my employees. And even to this day, I will walk into certain Whole Foods markets and they will say, "Oh, Sandy Gooch, how wonderful to see you." And now it warms my heart.
oh, that's fantastic. What a story. So you're living proof that if you stick to your values and you offer something that's needed and you have gumption. Obviously, you're strong, you're well educated, you're an accomplished woman. You were before you started the stores even. But Sandy, it's not just all fairy tales, is it? I mean, some people think if you're a CEO or if you own a company that you're wealthy or that you're rich and you can fly private planes back and forth. And I understand you had some setbacks. Maybe could you tell us a story about somebody betraying your trust or one or two kind of horrible things that happened to you when you were growing that business?
There were setbacks along the way. One was when my father passed away from prostate cancer after the second year of being in business. And of course, he had nurtured me with my ideas and continued to do research about quality products, so forth. So my mentor passed away. That was really an emotional setback, and I had to bring other people in who could do that kind of research.
Mm.
And again, another setback was when my one of my partners had some traumatic health issues and was not doing living an ethical life in regard to drugs and what have you. And that had to end and stop because that was not who I was.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another setback. Dealing with the government was really a challenge because the major pharmaceutical companies didn't want a Mrs. Gooch's or supplements to survive, let alone thrive, because that was a deterrent to their own industry. So there were many laws that were passed that we had to circumvent or contact Congress about. And so that was really a hard working situation that followed me for many years as I tried to maneuver and make sure that we would survive.
What kind of government relations is associated or connected to being able to call certain things organic or health
Well,
foods
there
or
are,
what?
yes. Well, with organic, there are now government laws. When I first started, um, different states had their own criteria, but now our government has a criteria in regard to what is organic, in regard to no pesticides, herbicides, and so forth. And now, of course, there is a new word out, regenerative agriculture, which not only means organic, but it also means regenerating the soil, making that whole and all, and also what kind of packaging are you using, and does that help with the planet? So it's more, the gestalt of it is more broad in regard to what the goals are. But in regard to supplements, there were not the standards that there are now or can be in regard to what ingredients do you put in, how are things manufactured, and still you find things that come from China which may not be appropriate for the body, may not have the appropriate labeling. So people still need to do their own research about what is right, or trust a store that will carry quality products.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, Sandy, all entrepreneurs, especially founders, have to overcome big hurdles, right? So you've already given us some advice, which is if you feel passionate about something, stay true to your values and your goal. You said specifically, don't compromise and don't settle for less. What other advice would you have for entrepreneurs? Because you didn't know
Okay.
everything. You weren't an expert in marketing and sales and finance before you started, yet you had to have a good business. All of these infrastructures had to grow healthy in time. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to sell and have that many markets. But what advice do you have? And then maybe you could share a couple of pointers about how you gained the skills, experience, and people you needed when you were still bootstrapping.
Well, I think one phrase you used, Patty, was in time. And what I see, one of the major mistakes that an entrepreneur makes is doing too much too soon. And because they are a success, they or their board or advisors say, oh, let's do it. Let's add this. Let's do that. Let's add on another product and so forth, without thinking, okay, we've got to do marketing. Do we have enough capital to do that? And many successful businesses go out of business because they're doing too much too soon. So take your baby steps as you continue to grow and expand, and don't do it all in one fell swoop. Make sure that you know what you're doing. How do you get to learn and know? Of course, the internet can give you information, of course, books and so forth. And then deal with people or entities that can give you the advice that you need in order to be sage with your decisions. Example, that's what you do. People come to you, Patty, to get added advice and information so that they can make the appropriate decisions without just being willy-nilly and say, oh, I'll do this because I'm really good at it, or I don't know about this. And so take it easy. I know we finally got a phrase of we were very good with edutainment and entertainment. When
Uh-huh.
people would come into our market, there were things that they could learn, be educated, edutainment, but in a fun manner, whether it was brochures, whether it was flyers, recipe folders, and so forth. And the entertainment was passing out samples, first market in the country to do that. And so people would enjoy the flavor, the sound, the smells, the scents, all of that as they were experiencing a new product or a new recipe. And so there was fun and verve and all of that as it occurred. Some of that came from being a school teacher. How do you motivate a classroom?
Mm.
You're not going to do that by just having everybody sit in a row while you spend 6 hours saying this, this, and this. They need to explore. The students, whether they're 5, 25, or 55, going and doing going back to university. They have to be engaged, and the professor or the university or the elementary school has to have that kind of quality, and for people to say, oh, I get it, it's wonderful, and recommend that school or entity to others. And that's the way it is with business too. Word of mouth or Facebook or whatever it might be, sharing with people, I had the best time doing this, or I learned so much, or I can't believe I feel so much better.
So you understood the principles of engaging your students to make educational experience much more successful and effective and enjoyable for everybody. And it sounds
Absolutely.
like I've heard edutainment before. I haven't heard eatertainment, but I like that. Yeah, that is fantastic. Well, Sandy, I know that also you had one advisor, or maybe he was a key vendor or consultant, and you decided to give him a different job. Do you want to say anything about your, was he a consultant and now he's
Well,
still a consultant?
actually, my husband that I met in 1978, Harry Letterman, was a sales manager for a natural food distribution company. Mrs. Gooch's was not dealing with this company. And so he had been told, go in and sell Mrs. Gooch's on going with us, meaning the company. So Harry came in, he'd never seen me before. And he came in, and I guess he said he fell in love with me right from the very beginning. Anyway, Harry said, I had a very difficult time selling her on my distribution company, so I sold her me instead. But because he had been in natural foods and all, he understood a lot about product movement, gross profit, and all. And he helped me so much in regard to that. So he really was an advisor, but one of the most fun advisors I've ever had.
Yeah. So it sounds like as the business evolved and got larger and your needs got bigger, that through time and the momentum that you had, you attracted the people that you needed. And I'm sure by the time you sold, you were, or probably early on, you were the employer of choice for conscious people who wanted to eat better, be
Yeah.
healthier, and that. So I love
We
that.
attracted people who had a similar viewpoints because they felt the synergism that would occur. And so they were believers. We also, with new employees, had a very rigid and stringent uh, training sessions. And they were trained not only in the category where there would be supplement or produce or grocery, whatever, but they were trained in regard to the entire market. What were we about? What could you do? How to be pleasant and encouraging to customers that would come in. So the training was significant. They didn't just come in and we said, okay, now you're an employee, go for it. It was rigorous, the training that they got. So I knew I had dedicated, knowledgeable people. And by the way, many of them still are working at Whole Foods.
Mm.
Mind.
Well, and hopefully your medical insurance was less because you had healthy employees for the
Yeah,
most part. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap up, Sandy, I'm just thinking about one thing. You did have a successful exit after many decades of running a successful business. But I remember the story towards the end, and so maybe we can kind of wrap up with that and then any additional advice that you have. But the story that you told me had to do with you hired an investment banker,
Yeah.
and his team worked really hard to help prepare the business and prepare the confidential memo. We call that the book, right? And most of my clients, I'm working on their exit, whether that be their eventual retirement, turning it over to their children, or having a successful sale. So I think your story about how you guys had a successful sale that was significantly more than it might have been some 6 months earlier. So I'd love it if you kind of wrap up with that story about how you were able to maximize your exit and your successful deal.
Well, first of all, we interviewed quite a few investment companies or investment bankers before we found the right one for us, Lloyd Greif.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew that he understood where our company was coming from. We had everything in order for Lloyd. Our gross profit, every financial thing that you can think of, we had available. How many employees, what, you name it, it was there. Then when Lloyd made the book, we reviewed everything that he had down and made a couple of suggestions along the way. Then when he put out the book and put out the fact that we were on the market as such, he would interface with us on a regular basis. I contacted this person. I contacted this company and gave us a rundown. So we stayed actively involved in regard to all of his action steps, so that we could give advice, so that we could get information and even questions that he might ask. Well, what about this? Or they asked that. And so there was certainly a wonderful back and forth and trust with the company that we hired. Trust, very important, because ethics are involved now. It's not only about the money, but what does this person or this company know? How long have they been in business? What are their qualities? A lot of questions need to be answered.
Two things I heard from that. You prepared carefully. You interviewed different investment banking firms. So you chose the one that you thought was going to be the best fit for you. You
Yes,
also mentioned that you had your books, your records, everything was in order. Probably your
yes,
personnel records, your finances, your
everything.
forecast, your profitability for years. That's good. And you stayed in touch with them. And then you had multiple bidders. Did it sell
Yes.
the minute it went out on the market? Did you have any tire kickers that you needed to send away?
We had really three major entities that vied for Mrs. Gooch's. One of them, of course, being Whole Foods. For me, I, because it was family for me, the other two entities could have acquired us, but what would they have done with us? Would they have diluted our standards and our goals? How would they have treated our employees? So now the emotion comes in, the gut feeling. So it wasn't all about the money. How is this company going to grow and expand? How will Mrs. Gooch's grow and expand and still maintain its ethics with this new entity?
Sounds like that was really important to you. You had
Very
to leave your baby on to a platform that was going to take it to even greater heights, but
correct.
also do that. So, okay, well, that was an amazing transaction that you did when you sold back in the 90s. Sandy, it's been 25 years or more since you sold now, and you've been involved in philanthropy, in education. I know you mentioned next week you're going to the International Women's Forum, which is an organization of preeminent women in their field. So, what are your one or two passion projects for the 2020s post-COVID world?
Well, I'm actively involved in a variety of issues. One of the passion projects that I have is supporting women leaders or potential women leaders in the world. And I work with the Harvard Kennedy School of Government in regard to that. Another passion is working with the International Women's Forum as it relates to supporting, networking women in their field and working with them, giving them thoughts and little helpful hints, and just enjoying being with people who have been a success or are striving for more success. Additionally, is consulting and helping startup companies in the natural products field,
Ah,
helping them grow and expand with their incredible products. Another is working with a nonprofit, Growing Great, which teaches students and the community how to plant, grow, harvest, prepare, cook, and eat food that's grown close to the source. And, many children in elementary school don't even know what broccoli is or Brussels sprouts or whatever. So it's expanding somebody's horizon as it relates to good food.
mm. Well, those are very worthy endeavors, Sandy. And I hope that your work continues to carry you on to inspire millions more people. Uh, you are blessed, but you've earned every blessing, I'm sure.
Well,
Thank
you go on with gratitude for what you have. And as I tell people, We have choices in life. We can either walk around like this, oh, nothing's right, or this happened, and oh, this was so bad. And things do happen that are a challenge. Oh, or we can walk around like this and say, I may have a problem or I may have a challenge, but life is good and good things are coming my way. We have a choice.
I love it. Sandy, thank you so